Hi guys, welcome in. So my name is Liesel and I am doing this tutorial today, which will remain up forever. You can watch on replay, the whale splash. So different colors can be put in for the painting. You don't have to do exactly the colors that I do. This is just the colors that I felt like putting in. Kind of random, but also colors that I liked. So I do have my palette with white, black, bright yellow, bright red, phthalo blue. This is the non-orange red. Alternatively, you can also use, instead of mixing your own purple, you can use pre-mixed purples. So I recommend a primary magenta, something like this. It looks exactly the same as that purple in there. So you can use something like this or any other pre-mixed purples. I have my water cup, some paper towel, and my brushes that I'm using are, I personally like this round one for trying to blend in different colors. You can use large, flat, or round, or a mop brush. Either one is great. I'm going to use this one today. And I have a couple more medium brushes, flat number 4, or a round brush, whatever works for you. I like the flat one. And number 0 and number 2 detail brush. So these are the brushes that I will probably be using. The round one, probably not, depends. Because I can still use I can use this brush for most of it. Okay, let's get started. So to get started with our mixing, we want to get all of our background in and then put the whale on top afterwards. So I'm going to start with more of a purpley color in the background, so the purples that are here, and then mix in some blue and some lighter kind of peach color or teal over top and around it all. So dip this in my water, my large brush. Dab it on my napkin. And you can, once again, you can take this this paint here. You can use something like this magenta. You can add a touch more blue because it's still quite pink looking. I'm going to take 2 parts to 3 parts red, 1 part blue. 3 parts red is usually safe. You can see that it's actually mixing pretty dark here. And I do need a little scoop of white to help get that vibrant color showing through more. So only a little bit of blue is all I needed for that. I'm going to take a bit more white. So a dot of blue, a couple scoops of red. Nice color. So a lot of the time I like to also just dab. You can dab with your brush, do swirly motions. I did a very cloudy look, so it wasn't all just going in one direction. A little bit of water with my paint, not too much water. So here's a section that I have from the corner. And just light little touches to not make it look like I sliced it in pie slices where it's just a triangle here or a square here and a square there. Maybe a little bit off to the side here. So make it a little bit different. So I'm just going to wash this off and we can blend in darker blue in just a little bit. But first I want to put in this light peach. Pretty nice. Similar to what we've been using. It's not going to impact our purple pink color too much unless you went very violet blue. Then yes, it will turn very green. I'm just drying this off on a napkin. And then I'm going to take white and a little piece size of yellow and a piece size of red. So you get this peachy cream color. Only little dots of or little piece sizes is necessary. You can see just how much white you need to really brighten it up. So you can test this out. I am actually going to put a couple inches from the bottom where my water is going to be. So I just put a line there. And if it's still too dark, just wash off your brush. And just washing it off, squeeze out the extra water. And take another scoop of contaminated white that was touching your peach. And you can go right over top of your darker color. See? And it will make it lighter. See, it just blends it out, makes it a lot lighter. So I'm going to use this and use up a lot of my paint in the empty spaces before I start blending into that wet magenta. Dab, dab, dab. As much as you want to do. Then light little touches as I get towards my magenta and wherever else you want to, if you want it to blend with it. It's picking it up. Just dab it, let it mix together. Again, like I said, it doesn't make bad colors, any weird green colors. If you made a pink purple, like how I did here, it just mixes pretty well. Light little dabs. You don't need too much paint on your brush. Maybe a little bit over here. If you really like these two colors together, maybe you want them to mostly just be these colors. You don't want to do any teal at all. Might even skip the teal today. No, I'll still do teal. I'll still do just a little bit of teal. So, there. Okay, I'm washing this off again. In our next color, I'm going to blend in my blue from up top into my magenta now. So I have a clean brush, no peach left on it. Otherwise, you will not get blue. You will just get a bunch of weird green colors. Blue. And quite honestly, I do like to put in a bit of red too. It actually doesn't make it very purpley. It just makes it look like indigo, a different type of blue. And only a small piece size is fine of white. Too much, it will be a bit too bright. But you can see the difference in the blue. It's no longer that very bright blue. You'll probably notice the difference if you mix blue and white without the red. You'll see a minor difference. So here's my more indigo blue. All of my paint into my empty section and wherever else you want to put it. Like, for example, if you want to put it a little bit over here, you can. Light little touches. Just make sure you use up a lot of your paint in the empty sections. And don't reload your brush unless you really need to. With just a small amount of paint left, you just lightly dab right into where your purples are. I like to mix with colors that mix well together. I'm purposely not trying to get over into this color because it just makes a bunch of green. Not that it's not a good idea or it's going to look bad. It's just you need to know how to mix it very lightly in if you're avoiding green colors. If you don't mind green, then that's fine. So just a little touch in here. So I don't have too much. Now, see, it's like it's more broken up and it's not a section of or a square of each color. So after you do that right away, just take a small dot of black. It's on the tip of this brush here. And I lightly tap with just a little bit of black, a little bit at a time. Take a bit of a time and you can actually add black to some of your blue to control it a bit better. So it's staying a bit on the blue side. I just darkened up this corner. That's it. And I wash this off again. Just dab it dry. And my last color is going to be more of a teal color, unless you have other plans. You want to do more of a light pink. It's interesting because, yeah, it can clash with your water, but it oddly enough complements your water. So you can follow along with me. You can see how it looks. And if you don't like it, just change up the color. Okay. So mixing this teal, very important. You only want, say, about, this is probably just too much blue, that little dot there. I'm just wiping off extra paint. Scoop of white, see all that white? You're just going to make a pretty light baby blue. See that? Then, this is as much yellow as you need. That's even a bit too much. There, took a bit off. And all of a sudden, it almost looks green, but it depends on how much of a green color you want it to be. If you want it to be a bit more bluish, you just add another little dot of blue and more white, but there you go. There's the teal. A nice teal. Start from the corner, empty spot. Use up all of your paint here. Then, I actually have too much paint on my brush. I didn't really want that much paint, so I'm just washing this off. Wash it off really well. All right. Take just a little tiny bit of your paint or your dirty white. I like to actually add a bit more white in, so it's a bit of my dirty white that was touching the teal, or white with a dot of teal that you made. See, you just get this nice subtle blend that's not overpowering the colors and it's not making weird brown or greens, colors that maybe you're not a big fan of in your sky. That's all. And I don't really have water on my brush for this technique. You can do the circular motions as usual. That works. And I had a section in here that I put a bit of teal in. So if you're feeling it, you can add in a bit more into some of your peach. Just be cautious. If it's not mixing well, wait for it to fully dry, then add it in. But you can see just how much white I put in to get that hint of color. I went lighter here than in there, but I kind of like the light look overall, so I'm going to leave it like that. So hopefully we have learned something with blending, different type of technique. The trick is don't overwater your brush. In fact, I like to keep it a little bit more on the dry side, but it still has water in it from when we dipped it in the water cup. And you're not using too much paint at a time when you're lightly tapping it. So you're not pressing hard, you're just lightly tapping it and over and again in some certain spots where you're blending it between two colors. You just go around the section a few times until it blends out. So after this, we can start the start of our wave. And it's going to look very awkward at first, which is fine because it's going to come together later on. It's going to look pretty wonderful. We want to make it look like a nice deep ocean, has that nice darkness and shadow. And then when it's lifting up, if there's a splash, that's where it gets more transparent because it's not as much water basically. So you're lifting up the water and it's actually much lighter, of course, as we know. And then this is the deep blue sea down below. Okay, large brush. I've washed it off really well, and I don't need too much water on my paintbrush. I'm just using whatever water was left from it when I rinsed it off and dabbed it dry. I'm going to pick a very light teal to start, then we'll go darker, because it's doing the opposite is it's not my thing. It's not really the best results in trying to make it look lighter. You don't want to have to do multiple coats to make things lighter. So remember this teal here. We're going to take this teal. This is great. You can actually add a dot more yellow if you want it to be slightly more greenish teal, only because in the ocean, it tends to look a bit more greenish in tone, right? It has slightly bit more green. Anyway, not overly, we're not going to go overly green. Okay. So I know that my whale is going to be, I want it to stretch pretty high up to the top, not the very top. I have about at least 1.5 inches of nothing, unless you want to go higher. And it's going to be right around here so that the body is more positioned, the head is more out this way, and it's going to curve in about to the middle and just have a nice bump going. And I know that it's not very realistic, but it looks pretty awesome. They tend to be more straight when they jump out of the water, but I like this positioning. So I'm going to have it like this. So I want this water to come up about the middle, just like that. And it's just going to, it's almost like you're making the start of a tree, you know, the root of a tree coming up from the ground. It's got a nice swoop in. And I can always make this bigger, which I will be. So don't start off too big. Filled in most of it. And I'm going to take just white from my brush. I'm not going to rinse it off. I'm actually going to make it lighter on the edges where it's more soapy and all that kind of thing. More transparent, much more transparent, a little bit thinner around the edges. The water kind of sprouting up a little bit more. Okay, so just a little bit right here at the top, just some plain white with whatever leftover paint I had on my brush. Pull it down. I'm going to leave it pretty streaky too. So that's fine. It's going to help just the way that the water is flowing. Then after this, don't really need to wash off the brush. I'm going to take a very dark version of teal. So more blue into this section, or you can do a new section. You can leave some of your teal for later. Just a small dip or two of yellow. So it's, again, looking slightly towards the green side, but not overly. It's mostly blue still. And just a smidge of white if it's still really, really dark, but it's much darker. It's definitely a few shades darker. Let's start from the bottom. Start at the base of our darker color down here. And then I'm going to streak it upwards. See, like that. On the sides. From the sides up. And just let it, don't overdo it. See how it's just staying streaky like this? If you overblend, it all becomes one color. And I'm going to leave that be. Just washing this off now. So I've washed it off. And I am drying this off. I don't want things to be overly watered on my brush. It's more of a dry brush technique. So I will build on the darkness, more of the contrast from the water at the very bottom. We want that. And for most of the part, we want to just leave this how it is. You can touch up on brightness, meaning you can put in more white in if you need more white. The splashing is at the very end, but if you need to get it lighter or add more things to it, wait for it to fully dry, which is what I'm doing. I'm going to start my outline and base coat of the whale. I'm just testing to see. So if you want to use a pencil, you can. You're not going to really see the pencil on my canvas, so I'm going to just go for it with a paintbrush. But I do recommend a pencil on your dry canvas in the background. You can come back if you need more time. You can pause this video. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to start off with a light blue-gray. Actually, I'll just do light gray. I'm just going to do that. Keep it more neutral in tone and get all of that outline. Put the little fins here just coming out. Put that in. So I'm switching to my number 2 brush. I'm going to take about equal parts black and yellow. Sorry, black and white. Don't take yellow. That's a no good color. I don't mind contaminated white. It's not a big deal for me whatsoever. There, so I have my gray. And now I'm using actually a little bit of water on my brush. So I just added a little bit of water on my brush to mix into my paint. And let's get this. So I know that I don't want to see too much of the bottom of the body, right? I don't want to see the very back. So I want it to look like it's somewhere about to come out here. It doesn't fully come out of the water. It still stays a little bit in there. So let's just go for it. Let's just do more of a straight. If you want to do more of a straight back, you can do that, which is kind of how I'm starting. It starts off a little bit more straight. We don't want to overdo it with the bending. And now we're getting into the head area, a little bump. See this bump right here? Bump, and then more of a swoop going across. I'm going to go a tiny bit darker just up here. You can see some of the outlining. Okay, and then it's not staying too thin on the end. It's a little bit more narrow at the tip, yes. Then it gets a little bit more wider around the bottom of the head. I'm just going to poof out a little. Nice and in. This is a big fella. We don't want to go too thin. I'm actually going a bit thinner than I intend to, just so that I'm not starting off too big and changing my mind. Here, I'm going to bring this in a lot more, much wider. And I like to use a bit more white on my brush for the underside, more of like the belly area, so that you can see which part is which, and I can go outside a little bit more. Okay, so to divide the body a little bit more, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just, I'm going to add a much more black. It's going to look almost black. So what you can see here is the body has a little bit of a turn. So you can see more of the top part of the body here, and then it just kind of swoops in a little bit more into the face. So I start off with that, and I fill in this more of my white streaks and like the bumpy, different texture on the underside of the belly, and more dark gray on the top. So you can fill that in with any brush, dark gray on the top here. So that's just more black added in with your white until it's looking like a very dark gray. So I just have to lightly go into some of my water so it looks like you can see a little bit at first, and just to be safe so you're not leaving any gaps. And I'm going to take just plain white, not washing off my brush, so that I can streak in more of that white here. And it actually brings in some of the gray color again, works out. And just use the thin side of your brush. Just follow this pattern here. Bunch of streaks. And take a step back. Make sure you're happy with the size that you're going for. And it's going to make a lot more sense when we put all of these little fins in that are just sticking out. It's going to really bring it together with more details later, of course. But let's let that sit for a minute and dry. Just washing this off. And I can go back into the water area so we can darken the bottom part now that it's dry for me. We can add in some darker teals or blues, some more midnight blue so it almost looks black at the very bottom and the sides. I am using, I think I'm just going to use my medium flat. So I've washed it off, and I'm going to start with, let's just start with a plain blue. Plain blue, nice and dark. So all I'm doing, streaking it up right from the side. Using the thin side, putting in little streaks, some a little bit longer, some a bit shorter. Touch of water on the brush. Do both sides. I didn't add any white into this. Accent the streakiness. And at the very bottom, I want to take a dark gray blue. So blue, touch of white, not too much white. It's actually going to still look like a dark blue, just a dot of it, and a little piece size of black. So it looks very dark gray blue. See that? You can take a touch more black, actually. Yeah. I'm going to use this. So I'm going to use a lot of my paint right here. There's this wave. See, we're going to start this wave. If you want to do more layering in, it's really nice. See, just a little bit of a bump up and swoop back down. And I'm just going to keep it nice and dark along the edges there. And you can leave a little something in the middle that's a bit lighter. I'm going to put more black just along the edge so it looks more shadowed, like it's going to curl over. You can also use this gray blue to use the thin side of your brush. Just lightly press. Just a couple little streaks coming up. A little bit above and behind the wave. Couple at the top here. I'm actually going to wash this off. I'm going to use my round brush to smooth some things out. You can take just plain white, for example, and add in, just kind of blend it out. Blend out anything a bit overly choppy. Also, I like to use it to highlight more at the top part of the water. Let's just keep it smoother, lighter at the top, a bit more transparent looking. And just blend out some of the colors we've been using, like the dark ones. Gets a bit lighter, make it more streaky with the white. The white really helps with the reflections and kind of the movement of the water and the waves hitting the light. If you have too much darkness towards the top, just smooth it out. Just pick it up, go right over top of it, and it turns much lighter. Okay, so I've washed this brush off. And another last little, not really a last color, but the bit of red and some blue, get a bit of a blue purple, kind of like what we had up here. Or you can actually use a dark purple. I like to use dark purple, a bit of blue, touch of red. Actually, your blue, gray, and some red. Try that out. A bit of water. Use the flat side or the very tip of one of your brushes. You can put in some of this color coming in. And some at the bottom here. Around the top of this wave. Just add some at the top of that wave here. Nice added color. And back to my flat brush, I'm going to jump back up here, put in some of this texture here on the back of the top part of the body, and then put in more streaks, making that texture on the underbelly. In terms of what to start with, I would start with just a little bit of some light gray or just white. So white, touch of gray. Or just add more white to your gray. I'm just going to pick it up by dabbing with the tip of my flat brush. I'm going to do this. You can also use the corner of your brush to make it look more dotted. I'm just using the corner of my brush, getting a lot of this filled in. You can even streak up a little bit of white just around the bottom so it looks like some of the water is pouring off here. A bit lighter right there. And I like to balance this out with black. So I just take plain black afterwards. And get this line a little bit more defined right around here. Switch to your number 2 or number 0 brush as you get up around the face. So right in here, I'm just going to just give it a bit of, it has a little bit of that bumpy, pretty close to around the mouth. See how it's leaving a little gap at the top? So to make it a bit easier to see and follow. Right at the top here, a bit more white. And you can actually outline very lightly, I would say number 0 brush, around the outside of the body. Okay, and I call it the armpit area. So the black around just where the arms are going to be coming out. So that's below the face. In this part where it's curving out more, you can accent this part a little bit more. With more black or dark gray. Little streaks coming from the outline. And you can use both this brush and your medium brush. You can even use a fan brush, but dotting in some of this more darker black detail. It actually turns out to be a dark gray since it's still a bit wet. So that's why I'm saying dark gray or black, because black, if it's still wet, it'll just turn dark gray. Thanks, Vicky. So yeah, thanks for watching. For those who have painted with me before, welcome back. And I'm just smoothing out this area here. I don't need it overly done on that side. Okay. So a little bit more texture on the back side. Like little dots is great. And on the front, I'm washing off my number 2 brush again. So I'm going to put in more just white, plain white, some bits of blue. Gray blue is good too, or you can do a light baby blue, just a very small amount. We're not going to overdo it. And then we'll put in all of this right here so that we can overlap it and not have to worry about, working around the body. So water, let's start with white paint. And I'm very impressionist with it, so I like to express more, not overly defining things. Just a couple little streaks. Remember that top of the tip of the mouth area. Water and white, plain white. Couple streaks coming in. If you did a lot of it, that's okay because you can always blend it out with darker colors. It's easier to start off lighter instead of starting off too dark and trying to make it lighter. Light little streaks. They're not all the same size and same consistency. Here, I like to do a little swoop around the top part of the mouth and just really over exaggerate the hump, just really make, since this is the wider part, I'm trying to over exaggerate that. So you have this little bump right here. And this is the widest part. I want that to be nice and noticeable. So a touch of light blue. So a touch of blue with your white makes a light blue. You can add that in, or gray blue, any blues, any colors even. You can reflect different colors from your sky into the belly of this whale. You can do that. I did a bit more blue because it seems to make a bit more sense with the water and everything. And you can go with a darker blue. You can add a couple streaks of darker, just plain blue. It doesn't have to be a super dark blue like a gray. You can just do plain blue. So let's go a bit closer into the body. You can see more of those streaks. I'm not trying to overblend. I am going to just take black paint, or dark gray actually. So that's just a touch of white added to your black. I didn't wash off the brush because it's still going to look very much like a dark gray, almost black. And adding this in for accenting the dark ridges, some more depth into the body here. Then you can smooth it out with as much white as you need to. If you need to wait for it to dry, wait for it to dry. When it's still very wet with darker colors, you notice that if I keep going over it, it actually just turns, mixes around gray. It doesn't really make it a nice highlight. So if I go over any of my black, it turns gray. Unless you're totally okay with that. All right. So there's more of the texture. Define any outlining with pure black into, say, the mouth area, around the sides of the body. Right around the mouth is good. Just pure black, getting right into that divided line that we made in the beginning. Okay, and after this, okay, so I'm going to pull it back again. Let's go back down here before we put in the little fins coming out. So you can see the positioning. I call it, remember that armpit area I was talking about where I put a bit more dark gray and black? So I want that first one that's on this side of the body, overlap and come out pretty far. The one on the other side, since it's on the other side, it's not as long from what you see. You only see the end part and it's coming down a little bit lower. But you can change up the positioning. Whatever you think looks good to you, whatever you feel like doing, you can do that. It's just, you know, how you want to capture this moment. So back at the bottom, just remember all of that dabbing. If you have a fan brush, you can use a fan brush. If you have a really frayed, crappy brush, okay, I call it the crappy brush. It's the frayed brushes that you want to throw out, but probably shouldn't, because you can get these, when you pull it out on a brush that's frayed like this, when you dab, you get a very spongy look. You can also use a sponge. So that will be after we are finished all the little details everywhere. And down here, let's put in a bit of black. I would say flat brush, black and blue. Black, blue, and a dot of yellow if you like the greenish. You're not going to see much of the green. It's just, you'll see a tiny little hint of it, and it won't look too black. So this is my color. This is black. It looks almost the same. See, in the light, it has that green teal, not totally green, but a teal. That's what I want. It's much darker. First off, let's just darken up next to this wave that's in the front. Give it a nice shadow coming in. Top, you can see there's some shadowing coming from the top of the wave, so I don't mind going over top of my wave. It's just going to work out later. It's going to blend out when I put the wave over top. More using the thin side as I get up towards the surface where it's a little bit highlighted and lighter. Okay, so I'm going to take a bit more black on my brush and just make that defined outline wave. And all I'm doing is just dragging it very lightly, just press pretty lightly and just drag it down a little bit, leaving that middle part still a bit brighter. I think it adds a little something extra, kind of nice. So since we have, it does look pretty clean, you know, like there's just a little small, not so messy, not much of a splash of the water coming out. Now you can add in a touch more. You want to just wash off your brush first of all. Take your flat one, take white and a dot of teal, for example. You want it to mostly be white. You want it to be so transparent and mostly white looking instead of too much of your actual color. So let's take that. Maybe a touch more yellow if you like things a bit more greenish. And let's see. Let's have this swoop out another little layer. See this? We're going to use the thin side. And all I did was just swoop it out a little bit further out. So you have a bit of layering from the water. So now I went a little bit lower, so I have a little bit more above it. Just tiny little things to give it a more above and beyond splashing look. And you can just have this come up a little bit higher here, a little bit more on the sides here. So it's not as clean cut. This one go up a little bit higher on this side, just for fun. Now it looks like it's not as perfect. It's a bit more realistic, authentic to the splash coming out of the water. And it's still very light. Very light. You can add, if it's too light, you know, maybe it's just white. Just add a dot of blue or teal, a bit of green, so a bit more yellow to give it that ocean yellowy green look. You can add a couple streaks of light blue. If I add some in, kind of pops out a little bit more too. I don't need it to overdo it. This is just white. Just trying to blend that out. Don't need it to be too choppy looking. Okay. So after I've done that, let that rest. I'm going to show you, yeah, we're going to finish up this part up here. Let's do that. And it will be mostly, after we do that, we're going to do mostly white, trying to make it look like there's lots of water splash. You can figure out on your own if you want to do like a whole ton of it, if you want to keep it minimal. It's really, it depends on, I guess, your personality and your preference. So I'm going to use my number 2 brush, and I'm going to start with a dark gray again. Bit of water. Okay, this armpit area, nice dark gray. Let's have this come out. I'm going to start with, actually, let's just start with the top part, like that. So it's going to swoop up a little tiny bit, out, and then down, kind of drapes down just a smidge. I want to think, actually reminds me of the length of Turtle's little arm sticking out. There, see that? Again, pencil is fine too. So you want to take it, I know it seems a bit long when you're looking at it really close, but in the grand scheme of it, yes, you want it to be making a statement and look believable. Like they don't have these little flappy things that are not coming out. You want it to be pretty long. It does start off a little bit thinner. Comes out. It actually reminds me also of a pea pod. So it starts off thin on each end, and it's a bit thinner on each end, and it's a bit wider, but it does look like, it almost looks like a boomerang. There we go. There's my analogy for that. Okay, so that comes slightly up and then drapes down just a little bit, but not like a droop. It's just a soft, natural bend. Then below that, we're going to leave a small little gap. So the one behind it is just kind of draping down a little bit too. It's roughly just about to reach the same length, but in its overall, you don't make as much of the fin on that side. There, we have another one. There we go. So it's a little bit bumpy. That's what I did. Kind of slightly wavy. All right. So I'm just making this thicker, not it overall thicker, just the line that I've made on the bottom parts. And then filling it in, washing this off with just white. It will pick up some of your dark gray, so it will turn very light gray or just gray in general. Don't add more white paint to the layering because it just is not going to work out. It's not going to get lighter. It's just going to keep blending and blending and blending back to a gray again. So I'm going to start off with a thin layer, fill it in kind of choppy, nice and streaky. There we go. Not going to overdo it now. It's hard to stop, but there we go. And this one as well. So using up all of my paint in the center, then working my way to the sides, letting it pick up that all that dark color. Nice and streaky too. And don't overblend. So you can come back when it's more dry with white to highlight it. I like to leave it nice and streaky because it goes with the rest of it. You can put in an extra touch of just plain black while it's wet because black will turn to a dark gray right from where it's coming out from. And just put a little streak in or a couple streaks around the middle part of the arm coming out. There. Okay, so I'm washing this off. Then we'll jump back down into the water, put in some of this white foamy stuff, get it started, work our way up type of thing. Okay, so the brush that I like to use for that part, making that foamy bits, again, if you have a fan brush, you can try it out with a fan brush, but personally, I prefer that fray brush I was talking about and the tip of a flat brush. So it could be medium or large. I actually don't use any rounded pointy ones. So let's start with this one. I'm just going to lightly tap it into my white. So you just grab some white and just tap it on the side a little so it gets into the brush a bit more frayed on the end. And here we go. So we're going to start with this wave, going more on the top part of the wave, lightly tapping around the top part. And then you can see around the peak, I just changed up a little. I gave it a little bit of a swoop bend instead of just a perfect roundness to it. We'll dip into it and then lightly tap and just a little less following the bottom. So it's not a perfect outline. I'm going to go back over with more white. It's actually picking up some of that blue and I don't want to keep using it. I'm good with this for now. Again, let's pick up some more white. Tap with the tip of your brush. And you can actually just lightly put in, coming from, some of the top parts here, get some of the splashing going on the sides. Into some of the middle parts, maybe you have a soft little splashing wave coming in that you want to accent. On the top part, a bit more splashy. So I'm using some of them. If you stop a little bit shorter, for example, it looks like there's a smaller little wave right here. And up here, where I have a bit more layering, I'm going to stop right up here. Like little taps going outside. You can use the corner of your brush as well. And all along, just work your way in sections is what I like to do. So they're not all the same height. They could be different heights. Some can come a little bit lower. So right here, I'm going to go a little bit lower. Like little taps with the tip of the brush. Lots of layering so that it's not just polka dots. And I like to just cover all of the sides. So it doesn't look like it covers all the edges, so it looks a bit more splashy. And it looks like it has more of an impact like this. And some over here. So you just work your way around wherever you see the ends of your little strokes. Put in a bunch of foam. And just go up higher here. So the higher parts, I want to bring them out a little bit more away from the whale so it looks like it's just going all over the place. And you have to also think about the direction. It's not meant to be perfectly straight lines. You want things to kind of look like they're in motion. They're going to fall over and fall eventually. So have it, just think about the bending and how it's folding out a little bit too. And you can be thicker with your white on some parts than others, so it's not all the same. All right. So you have down here, I had that little bit coming down, and you can even add just white streaks. Bring out some of the streaks into the water. So for example, some of the white streaks, you can put a lot more streaking up where it seems to be parting here. Also more into the middle where most of the water is coming from. Where most of the busyness is coming from, all of that movement. And I'm going to add in more of a white highlight back in here. You can add a bit of blue too. So if you were doing blue into the body, add a tiny bit. 2 streaks are fine. There. This is my light green teal. I'm going to wait for it to dry actually. Just popping up this color a little bit into the white. Okay. Let's start with some of the splashing coming from the top and the water dropping down. With this, you want definitely water and some white paint. Number 0 brush is great. I'm going to take and water down. So I'm just going to take it a bit more watered down so that it's more consistent, smooth. I don't mind dirty white, that's okay. As long as it's not looking brown or purple. Just if it's touching a touch of black, that's fine too. Okay, watered down. And so you can see just from up here, you know that there's a lot of water dripping down. So it's kind of doing like this. It's not like a straight, perfectly straight line. In fact, you want to avoid that. It's almost like it's following the pathway, how this whale is kind of coming upwards. So it's just following that, nice and rounded, meaning it has a bit of a bend to it. And there's a lot here, so you have to really commit. Just lightly press with the tip, keep adding more paint with water to it. So there's a bit of an overlap as I'm doing this a few times. And you can go as far as you want to. They're not all the same length, so you can do some a bit shorter. Not as much water is falling down. And I do accent it with a touch of light gray later on, but we'll get there. And same with around water again with some paint around here, since this is picking up water with it. So there's going to be a lot of water flowing down. And I want to think rounded. So it's just doing, so it's going this way. I want it to follow that pattern a little. Some shorter lines, some longer ones. Sometimes you can just add a touch more water to your paintbrush and try to get just a little bit of water in the background here. So it's just a smidge of whatever leftover paint is coming off very lightly. And sometimes it's going to be collected a little bit more together. I feel like it would swoop up a little bit more right around here. A little bit less towards the end. Kind of like a waterfall. So take your time with this. Stop in between just so that you can always take a step back and see how it's going, how it's kind of flowing down. None of my streaks here are perfectly straight at any point. So you can take a dot of black with some of your white and get a pretty light gray. If you want to just follow some of these lines here, put in some more extra streaks of some gray. Not overly doing this, I'm just here and there. I think it pops out a little bit more. So very subtle, it didn't overdo that, just a few. And I'll add a lot of dots up here. We're going to use this brush. But let's just go back to the bottom, get this to our liking. I'm going to take that brush here, the frayed one, and I'm just going to lightly, you can see just how much of a difference it makes with a frayed brush. So you can take even a toothbrush, actually, an old toothbrush, a sponge, There are so many things you can use to really get this texture. You can purposely ruin a brush that you don't really care about just to fray it. All that. Grab a little bit more, tapping with the tip of the brush. You can follow this all over on the sides. I like to grab a bit more paint as I get up into this area so it looks like it's a lot thicker. Just follow the direction, the way that it naturally comes out. And when you use more paint, it actually looks like it's sticking more out and poking out at you. It's kind of great. More paint. And let's do a bunch all the way up here. We have a lot up here. Side of the whale just a little bit. And when you have more water, for example, collected right here, I think I'm just going to cover it with some more of that light dabbing, the spongy look with the foamy bits. And any amounts along the back side here, following up over towards the body, just a tiny little bit back there. Okay. Okay, so just know when to stop too. Got a lot going on. But that should mostly do it for that tutorial. If you lose sight of anything, you can go back when it's dry, try, because otherwise it makes more of a mess, but you can go back in, make things more visible, say here or there or into the body. You just have to be very careful. Like if you want to show more of the body, you just have to, I like to lightly tap because it's a bit more textured here around where you want it to still show. Bring it back out again. Or into the body, you can add more streaks in here if you want it to be more visible. You just have to be very careful. All you need is just a few, and it's a bit more, you can see a bit more. Right, so you can do that. Follow some outlines. you lose sight of anything. And I think I'll just leave it. So you can show your results on our Facebook page. You can go to our groups and you can put it into the support group that we have actually. Always take a step back, look at your painting, come back maybe with fresh eyes the next day. You can add more things to it. I like to add sometimes a bit more shadow, like around the armpit area that I was talking about before. Keep it kind of dark around this section here. And you can also just sign your painting. Thanks for painting along with me. Hopefully it was not as hard as you thought. I think it was a bit easier than maybe how it looks. It looks like there's a lot going on, but yeah, love to see some results. And maybe I'll see you guys again another time for some painting. I have another free event coming up with myself on 27th of this month. It's a more of a realism with clouds and a farm. It's pretty cool. And you can check out our website, artistpaletteDurham.com, to see our upcoming free events, Zoom events, and subscribe to our channel to just see more of what we have going on. Thank you guys.